course, I would like to start with thanking the organizers for having invited me to this conference, and I'm very happy to be here in Shanghai and take part in this panel, because it happens that my colleague and I were just about writing a paper on this topic. And we are looking at Western images, and especially the so-called perception gap. Here on the left side you see Guanghua, and here's a symbol for China's peaceful rise, but our images of China is much different, like the panda China taking away the wealth from the US, or eating up the dragon, eating up our companies and products. And we can say that the so-called threat stories in Western media are really the bestsellers. So we have a situation which is quite difficult in terms of image. Our paper focuses on two questions. First, what is the image of China as an economic and political power in Western countries, and China's self-image, and Western countries' perception of the so-called China model. The conceptual framework is based on the discussion of image theory and stereotypes in international relations. Political decision-making is seen as directly linked to images and perception. Just a few words to methodology. We use opinion polls, and one of the opinion polls was supervised by us. It was a so-called TNS-Mnet opinion poll, which is part of the so-called Huawei study. Huawei technology company, the Chinese company well known by you, I think, approached us in 2013 and asked us to be the supervisor of the study. They had done a study before in 2012, but received a lot of critics, and so we were happy to consult them. We got money for that, but under the condition that we are academically completely independent, and this was guaranteed, and I can assure you that they did not intervene in our definition or the assessment of the study. So this poll included 1,300 interviews in Germany and vice versa. Here we only concentrate on the German perception of China. Among the 1,300, there were 200 business people and 100 people, policy-related people, and done in 2013. So I will not talk very long on this conceptual approach, but there are some terms I need to explain, like the national image. A country's image is important. As an economist, we all know that. There is a strong influence of national image on the consumer decision. So if I buy a Brilliance car, you know, this car, a Chinese car now produced in China, a very sophisticated car, it might face some problems in Western country because of the so-called nation-product image interaction. In political science, we have the relationship between national image and international environment, and this goes back to the times of the Cold War. Boulding and all these people have talked about that and wrote about that. And here is a quotation by a political scientist. He said, "We assign images to other actors, states, that mirror our perception of these actors." So it's perception, not facts. And another quotation here, defining images as beliefs about the character's intention, motives, and emotions associated with the other, with the outgroup. So again, not fact, it's our beliefs, what we think of the others. Some more terms, very briefly. Self-image reflect cultural identity of state actors, contribute to the legitimation of the international engagement, and are national role conception important for foreign policy making. And about image gaps, there are lots of authors, among them some Chinese as well, like Pan Zhongqi. He said we can reduce this perception gaps if the environment, the international environment, is favorable for that. And maybe it is not at the moment. So we have different images. The two, the ally and the image, the enemy image, are the two most often cited ones, and in the core on this difference is the question whether the actors have compatible goals, equal power and capability, and equal cultural status. And if this is the case, then there is an ally image. Other actor states are perceived as trustworthy, cooperative, and democratic, and if not, of course, the other way, they are not trusted, and there's a problem with cooperation. And if we have this enemy images and threat perception, then there's a danger that it triggers security dilemmas and mutual distrust and uncertainty exist. So, So I come now to the point where I would like to share some of the findings. We started by comparing different opinion polls, and we were doing this because we were surprised that in our Mnet survey we found that only 24% of the Germans had a favorable perception of China. We found this very strange because normally we think relations with China is quite good, but the overall image in Germany of China is not very favorable. But then we used other polls and comparing it, saying that here, for example, the Pew poll, in this poll, only 28% again of Germans think that they have a very positive image of China. And now we tried then to trace back why this is the case. Why is there such a low image of China in Germany? And I think, and it is also in the questionnaire very clear that it is because of the political power. They are worried, or rather worried, about China's political power. You see the share of people who answered to this question. They are not so much worried about China's economic strength. It's almost a division between worried or not worried, so it's not very certain if they're worried, maybe not. So we looked closer at some of the issues related to the political system, like human rights situation, China rule of law, freedom of expression, free access to internet, environmental and policy and climate policy, and all in these areas. If we take this scale of 1 very positive to 5 very negative, we found that most of the interviews had a very negative perception of China. And if we compared with opinion polls about in the US about China, it's almost the same situation. So, but there was a positive, sort of positive image of the Chinese economy, and we use here the opinion poll, the Pew opinion poll, and saw that German interviews perceived China already as a leading global economic power. This was quite surprising to us. If you see, for example, the share of German interviews having, no, it's about 49%, almost half of the Germans think that China is already today a leading power, and only 20% think that the US is a leading power. So we were quite surprised, and even more, about 2/3 think that China will replace the US as a leading power in the future. The yellow line is China's self-perception, and it's a bit different. They are not very sure if China is already a leading power today, but they are very sure that there will be a leading power in the future. So why are the German interviews so pursued that China is already a leading power? And then again in the questionnaire there are some explanations. For example, Germans think that the economic relationship with the US is less important than relationship with China, and that China's economy has a strong impact on the German development. And even this is surprising, we think that Chinese investment is perceived as favorable for the German labor market. So very positive image in terms of economic relations. But there is also some threat perception. 58% of the Germans think that maybe imports from China crowd out local companies, and 42% think that only the Chinese side benefits from technological cooperation with China. So let's look at the second question, how this system is perceived. We asked by suggesting some attributes, what is the Chinese system like? How can you define it? So we have the attributes socialist, efficient, capitalist, democratic, and we find that they are very confused. They don't know really what the system is like. And this is very clear because I think that the Chinese system consists of many complementary things and different things. And the China model, the China Morsche, I think it starts with the pragmatic reform approach by Deng Xiaoping and Chen Yun, the bird in the cage. So you have some states, some private actors joining together. And of course, there is a division among Chinese scientists what this China model is like. Some are still thinking it's similar to the European or Western development path, and some political scientists think that it's a specific system which not automatically leads to a transition to a pluralist democracy and capitalism. So there are sort of diverse ideas about this China model. But one is very interesting way I would like to introduce here. He is basing his argument on the Confucianist tradition, saying that the government serves the people. Selection of officials is not based on the normal election in Western countries, and there is a coexistence of state-owned companies and state and private companies. Maybe this is some of the ideas now in our new program, which has been introduced in 2013. So my last slide. Some preliminary summary. The way China is perceived in our countries is very important, as it determines the political and economic relations. And despite all the achievements that China made in economic development, the image of China in the West is not very favorable. And because I think mainly it's a negative perception of the political system. And this goes back to incompatible goals, intention, motives, and different moral values reflected in China's national and international policies. And I think we have difficulties understanding this very complex China governing system. And on the other hand, China itself, its self-image, they are not aware what that means to the West, and I think we need more dialogue, and this is while we are here at the moment in Shanghai at the Shanghai Forum. Thank you very much.